Winter can be a really difficult time to take photos. It can be really boring and grey and flat. It can be really uncomfortable to go out and take photos. It can be wet, it can be windy, it can be cold, but it definitely has its moments. There's definitely pockets of time during winter where you can get really unique, really interesting landscape photos. So that's what we're going to talk about. It's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday we bring a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. This week, of course, is no different. Now, I don't know about you, but for me recently, it has just been grey, constantly grey, just that kind of boring overcast grey as well, where there's no detail to the sky. It's just a one-note colour, really flat, it's wet all the time, nothing looks good. I kind of hate it, to be honest. It's my least favourite time to go out and take photos, and this is what I hate about photography in winter, is this really boring kind of time. But every now and then, you'll get pockets of really amazing light. You'll get snow, you'll get really interesting kind of landscapes, and those are great times to go out and take some landscape photos. You know, that sun never really gets too far above the horizon. It's always a nice low sun, so you always get some good kind of directional light. It's not too horrifically harsh, and you can really take advantage of that. So let's talk about some tips that you can do right now to take advantage of some winter landscapes, to capture some awesome winter photos. Let's get into it. Let's start off with talking about preparations. Not the most exciting, it's not the most glamorous one, but let's talk about it because it is really important. This is unlike other seasons. You know, summer, you can just sort of head out in your t-shirt and shorts, camera in hand, no worries. You'll get something. Sunset's going to be amazing. Don't worry about it. But in winter, if you're not prepared, you can really run into some trouble. Now, first up, that means dressing in a bunch of layers. You know, when I went out the other day, I actually went down to the sea. It was one of the only days where we had some nice light, and I took some photos, but it was incredibly windy. It was super, super cold. And if I hadn't been wearing loads of layers, it would have been a really, really uncomfortable time. I was also wearing gloves, which fortunately I was able to still use my camera with without any problems. But being comfortable is a big part of being able to stand out in the wintry weather, because wintry weather, you know, you often think of snow or something like that. Snow is actually not too bad to be out in. It's the rain and the wind and the cold and all that stuff. So being prepared with layers and stuff like that is a big part of it. You also want to make sure you're taking extra batteries, especially this time of year, because batteries can lose their charge much faster in the cold. So taking an extra battery, taking a couple of extra batteries can just stop you running into that particular problem, which is just no fun, having to cut a shoot short because you're out of battery. No good. Something else which I find completely invaluable at this time of year is checking the weather pretty much constantly. If I know I'm going to go out and do a shoot on a certain day, I will check the weather the day before, the night before, and then the morning of that day to see what's changed, what's going on, what's it going to be like. If I'm planning to do a shoot and I'm waiting for a good day, I will be constantly checking the weather just to see when is the light going to be good. What are we going to be thinking wind-wise? What are we going to be thinking snow-wise? All that kind of stuff. I will just be checking that constantly because it can change a lot. And a lot of days will not be particularly good light, or not be particularly interesting weather. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on. Now let's move on to something a little bit more fun. What kinds of photos can you go out and take during winter? Well, there's actually a lot more than you might think. You know, snow landscapes are just one type of winter landscapes. And to be honest, I have only ever been out to take photos of the snow once in my life, ever. It just doesn't snow enough, especially where I live on the south coast. It doesn't snow enough for me to be able to go and get those wintry, snowy landscapes. So if it does snow, the very first tip I'll say is head out as soon as possible, because you want to get there before everyone else has already not ruined the snow, because, you know, everyone's having a good time, but before everyone else has kind of trampled through it, churned it up, put marks in it. You want to get there as quickly as you can, ideally while it's still snowing, to take advantage of those snowy landscapes, to take advantage of the pristine snow. That can look fantastic. You want to try and combine it with some good light if you can, but either way, you just want to make sure you're out there getting pictures of snow, especially if you live somewhere like I do where you just don't get it very often and you cannot afford to miss it. But of course, it's not always going to be snow in winter that you're taking photos of. In fact, most of the time it's not going to be, but there are loads of other great things to take advantage of. Now, what I like about winter is sunrise is actually pretty late. It's a pretty reasonable time. Same with sunset. You don't have to stay out very long to get to those. And the sun doesn't go nearly as high in the sky as it does later in the year, which is great because you can always get directional light. Now, sunrise, sunset, always going to look fantastic. And if you can head out and get those kind of images, you're going to get some really beautiful winter sun, which looks fantastic. But if you go out a bit later in the morning or early afternoon, anything like that, you can still get some really beautiful light with that winter sun. Now, something which is unique, I think, to winter is being able to go and take kind of desolate landscape photos. Very different to that kind of vibrant, colorful look you get in summer or spring with all the green and the flowers. You can get some really kind of hauntingly beautiful shots, but very, very different vibes to those summer photos. So, for example, heading out where you've got no leaves on the trees into a forest or into a landscape which is a bit desolate from where it would normally be green and vibrant is a really interesting and different kind of photo to take. An interesting project you could do with that is to take the same photo from the same spot in winter and then again in summer. You can get two very contrasting looks to your landscape, and that can be an interesting project. But that is a unique thing, I think, at least to winter, to be able to capture. And of course, winter brings along some pretty bad weather. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, there's a lot of grey sky. And for me personally, for the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of that kind of uniform grey sky, which is just no fun to go out and photograph. But you do occasionally get storms, you get really bad weather, and that can create some really interesting dramatic moments to photograph. Storm clouds always look great. That can be a great one to go out and photograph. And high winds can create some really dramatic scenes with waves smashing against beaches or beach defenses or something like that. You can get some really interesting dramatic photos with high winds and water. And lastly, don't forget, if it's not particularly nice out, if it's just constantly raining, if it's just constantly grey, flat light, this is a great time to edit photos, especially if you've got a backlog of photos that need editing or if you want to experiment around. We've just done a video last week about how it can be useful to do multiple different edits of the same photo. Maybe have a play, maybe learn some new stuff in Photoshop, maybe learn some new stuff in Lightroom, Capture One, whatever it is you use. Now can be a good time to kind of experiment with that and really have a deep dive into that and just have some fun. You know, there's loads of stuff you can do. Go back to old photos, apply a new style, all kinds of stuff. I certainly do when the weather's not great. It can be a really, really good time to just get stuck in. But what do you think? What are your tips for shooting winter landscapes? How do you decide when you want to go out, what you want to photograph? Let me know down in the comments because I'd love to get a conversation going. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I will, of course, see you in the next video. But until then, as always, thanks for watching.